Here's the truth, friends of the soil. When your garden looks dead, compacted, lifeless and unresponsive, it is almost never the plants that are the real problem. It is the soil. And when I poured this simple mixture onto what looked like a hopeless patch of ground, worms didn't slowly appear over weeks. They surfaced within days, by the hundreds, then the thousands. If you care about real results, long-term fertility and soil that improves every season, stay with me. Subscribe to Garden Wisdom, leave a comment with your soil struggles, and share this with someone whose garden needs rescuing, because this is not theory, this is practice that works. Why worms are the ultimate sign that soil is healing. Earthworms do not move into bad soil. They are not miracle workers that fix dead ground by themselves. They only arrive when conditions become livable, when food becomes available, and when moisture, oxygen, and microbial life are in balance. Worms follow biology, not hope. If you see worms multiplying, it means bacteria and fungi are thriving, organic matter is breaking down correctly, and the soil structure is improving. That is why farmers and serious gardeners treat worms as a soil report card rather than a bonus. What I poured into the soil and why it worked so fast. The mixture was a biologically active compost tea boosted with a simple carbon source. Not store-bought fertilizer, not chemicals, not gimmicks. I used finished compost, clean water, and unsulfured molasses. The compost introduces beneficial microorganisms. The molasses feeds those microbes immediately, causing a population explosion underground. Worms are attracted not to the molasses itself, but to the microbial bloom that follows. This creates a living buffet beneath the surface. How to mix it correctly so you do not harm your soil. For every 20 litres of non-chlorinated water, I added 2 full cups of mature compost and 1 tablespoon of unsulfured molasses. The compost must smell earthy, never sour or rotten. If your tap water is chlorinated, let it sit in an open container for 12 to 24 hours before use. Chlorine kills the very organisms you are trying to introduce. Stir the mixture vigorously for several minutes to oxygenate it. If you have an aquarium pump, you can aerate it for 4 to 6 hours. But even manual stirring works if you apply it immediately. So here's how I applied it to dead soil for maximum impact. I didn't just spray this lightly like you would with a foliar feed. Instead, I absolutely drenched the soil. The goal was to soak the top 10 to 15 centimeters because that's where most of the microbial activity actually happens. One 20-litre batch covered about 10 square meters of badly depleted ground, give or take. I made sure to apply it in the early morning when soil temperatures were moderate and moisture loss was, minimal, and honestly, within just 3 days, worms were already visible under the mulch and just below the surface. Now, let's talk about why mulch is just non-negotiable if you want worms to stick around. Pouring compost tea without mulch is, well, it's like opening a restaurant and leaving the doors locked. Worms need protection from heat, predators and drying conditions, so I immediately covered the treated soil with a 5 to 8 centimeter layer of organic mulch. Dry leaves, grass clippings, straw or even shredded cardboard all do the trick. This layer helps stabilize moisture, feeds fungi, and creates that dark, cool environment worms absolutely demand. Without mulch, the effect just fades away really quickly. So, how often should you repeat this? And when do you stop? Well, this isn't something you just pour on weekly forever. For severely dead soil, you want to apply once every 2 weeks for about a month, then just observe. Once worm numbers go up and the soil becomes crumbly and dark, you can reduce applications to once every 2 to 3 months. It's important to remember, overfeeding microbes can cause imbalance. Healthy soil, when given organic matter and protection, will start to regulate itself. So, what mistakes actually drive worms away, even after they've arrived? Well, Overwatering is, honestly, one of the biggest killers of worm populations. Saturated soil just suffocates them. Another mistake to watch out for is adding synthetic fertilizers after you've done your biological treatments. The salts in chemical fertilizers can disrupt microbial life and, burn worms. Tilling is another silent destroyer. Once worms have established their channels, turning the soil basically collapses their habitat. If you want them to multiply, it's best to disturb the soil as little as possible. So let's talk about how this changes plant growth over the long term. Within just a few weeks, plants in treated soil start to develop deeper roots, stronger stems, and, honestly, much better resistance to heat stress. Worm castings increase nutrient availability, but they do it without forcing growth. Instead of those fast, weak plants, you get steady, balanced development. And, over time, soil that once cracked and hardened begins to absorb water more evenly, which really helps reduce runoff and erosion. Now, why does this work in any climate with just a few small adjustments? In hot regions, it's best to apply in the evening and increase your mulch thickness. But if you're in a cooler climate, apply mid-morning and reduce watering afterward. The ratios, though, they stay the same. Biology responds everywhere as long as the conditions are right. Soil life simply doesn't care about gardening trends. It responds to food, moisture, and shelter. Here's the bigger lesson that, honestly, every serious gardener needs to understand. You can't force fertility. You invite it. When you feed soil life instead of just the plants, everything else follows. Worms are not decorations. They're engineers, recyclers, and really indicators of success. If you want a garden that improves every season instead of declining, this approach becomes your foundation, not just a trick. If this helped you see soil a bit differently, go ahead and subscribe to Garden Wisdom right now. Share this with a fellow gardener who's struggling with dead ground, and do comment below if you want more deep, practical soil restoration guides. This channel is about results, not shortcuts. And remember, the soil always tells the truth.